As someone who struggled with depression most of my life, I wish that I knew these three keys to healing much sooner. It would have saved me a lot of time and tears and sweat, probably, because I struggle so much just being comfortable with myself and feeling that I'm a worthy person, that I deserve to be on earth. So, the three keys to healing, the first one is inner child work. Most of our traumas originate from the times when we are very young. And because we're so young, we don't have the necessary tools, skills, or wisdom to deal with the issues that come our way. And that creates anxiety, stress, worries, and eventually, because we lack the skills and knowledge, and also because we don't have a reliable adult who can step up and address these issues with us and teach us along the way, those issues and those obstacles that we face early on become embedded in us in form of trauma. So the first thing we have to do on our healing journey is to address and face those traumas. And to do so, we need to work with our inner child. Because when we face those traumas early on, the child the child within us that faces those traumas is stuck in time. It doesn't grow or develop because it doesn't have enough safety and comfort to do so. So a part of us is fragmented from our core self and becomes this wounded inner child that is stuck in time, ruminating over and over again about this obstacle, about this trauma that they have faced. So when we do inner child healing work, what we actually do is go back in time and find these fragmented parts of ourselves. These fragmented parts is essentially what makes up our inner child as an umbrella term. So when we find these fragmented parts and the memories that are attached to them and the traumas that they had to face and the issues that they have developed towards these trauma, then what we need to do is to become the reliable adult that we never had, that these parts never had, that our inner child never had. We need to become this adult that provides safety, comfort, reassurance, and does everything in their power to ensure that the inner child can be safe and can have all the conditions it needs to thrive. We need to become the adult, the parental figure that we never had in our lives. So essentially, what we need to do is to reparent our inner child by conveying to this part that it's okay, you can relax now. I have come to take care of you. I have come to provide for you. I've come to give you comfort, support, and safety, everything you need to live a very happy, thriving life. I've come to give you space for you to heal and for you to grow as well. And even though the adults in your life might have failed you and they might have betrayed you in the past, I'm not like them. I'm here to stay. I'll be here for you. Anytime you need me, I'm here. I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to give support. I'm ready to provide. I'm ready to give safety. I'm ready to stand up and protect you against other forces that try to take you away from safety. And I'm here to take you away from situations where you don't feel safe and secure. And what you need to do is to prove to your inner child that you will act on these words. For example, if you're in a toxic relationship currently, then this role model of a parental figure, of an adult figure in your life, would essentially help you by bringing this inner child out of this toxicity, out of this environment that doesn't help, that doesn't aid its growth, nor does it provide safety. So, what you need to do is talk the talk and walk the walk with your inner child, becoming the parental figure, the role model, the adult that this child needs in order to heal the issues that they had, the traumas that were embedded and engraved in them in their childhood. And by doing this work, what we essentially gain is the trust of our inner child. This is beneficial in many ways because one of the damage that is done when we have a wounded inner child is that we continuously seek out adult figures that could provide support and safety. We seek out these figures usually in form of partners and friends, oftentimes forming codependent relationships with them, relationships that are unhealthy because essentially when we're wounded, we tend to attract people who resemble the not reliable parental figures that we had, and remind us of the traumas that we already have gone through. And from a spiritual perspective, this makes sense because essentially a soul's purpose is to gain autonomy and independence. We need to learn to be wholesome in ourselves. And when we cannot do so because we have lived through traumas in this lifetime, then life will send us people that are able to trigger exactly those wounds that we have lived through that have caused us to become fragmented, to become unwhole, so that we can see these traumas when they resurface and address them, and through addressing them, become wholesome again, become autonomous and independent in our being. So, by healing our wounded inner child, we essentially learn to become wholesome again. We mend our fragmented parts. We make peace with ourselves. And by doing so, we're able to attract the partners that are not there to remind us of our wounds, but are there to aid our growth. The second key to healing is shadow work. Shadow work is healing the parts of ourselves that we have repressed, aka our shadows. Shadows are formed when we are oppressed. We're oppressed by people who have authority in our lives. When we're told that we are not enough, when we're told that what we're doing is inadequate. And because of that, because of the external pressure, external invalidation, we start to develop the shadows. The shadows are the parts that were once rejected by the authority figures in our lives that then taught us to ourselves reject these parts of us. We soon become adults that develop the same qualities as the people who oppress us and rejected us by rejecting and oppressing ourselves. And the parts of us that we have repressed, oppressed, and rejected, they become our shadows. And it's quite easy to find these shadows because they usually hide within our negative emotions of shame, guilt, of feeling inadequate, of feeling unworthy, of feeling that we're not enough, and also in the feelings of jealousy and envy towards others. For example, when we see someone shine in the spotlight and we feel envious, how can they be so cheeky? How can they be so arrogant? How can they enjoy the spotlight so much and just keep yapping online? Essentially, what could actually be happening here is that we have a shadow that really loves the spotlight, a part of us that once thrived to be an artist, to be a creative. But that part heard the parental disapproval that told us that what you're doing is inadequate. You should stop dreaming of being an artist. You should stop dreaming of a spotlight because that's not realistic. And you should be more grounded. You should be more focused on the things that actually make money. So, just like that, our dreams of being in the spotlight, of shining in our unique light, of being our artistic and creative self is crushed because of someone's invalidation, because of someone's disapproval and dismissal. So then, because we crave love from the authority figures, we tend to agree with them. And then we become the strict parent that imposes the same standards, the same views on ourselves. So we ourselves start rejecting that expression, that freedom, that creativity, that artistic being. And when we see other people, we see that they're able to live the life of our dreams, the life that the shadow of us once dreamed of and wished for. We see what we could have been if not for this dismissal and rejection and disapproval. And part of us feels really bitter and hurt because it's essentially a wound that reminds us that we were not supported, we were rejected, we didn't have love, we didn't have approval of who we truly are and our true desires. And it was the reminder that being ourselves is shameful. Being ourselves is not enough. So we have to mask and be someone else. So when we see other people unmask or living the life of our dreams in the spotlight, we feel this sense of disagreement. It reminds us of everything we should have had, we could have had, but we don't have, of a person we could have been, but we were not allowed to be. So when we see these emotions, this negativity that is addressed towards other people, these blown out reactions towards other people's freedom of expression, we can understand that this is our shadow. And what we need to do for the shadow is to address it like a rebellious teenager that wants approval, that wants recognition, that wants acknowledgement. So, what we need to do is exactly that. We need to acknowledge, recognize, and validate this rebellious teenager, this shadow part that lives within us. And by that, the shadow gains freedom and confidence, and it gives us back the power to become that which the parental figures in our lives, the authority figures in our lives, didn't allow us to be. So, by unleashing the shadow, by accepting the shadow and integrating it back into our system, we become whole, we become free, and we gain back the power, and it gives us so much more energy to chase our dreams. So after we have healed our inner child, reparented our inner child, and after we have integrated our shadow, that has given us so much more energy already because we're able to soothe ourselves, we're able to provide safety and the right environment in which we can thrive and grow to our potential, and we're also able to accept the powers that were once rejected. So now we're already more than halfway there. The last key to healing would be to have a holistic approach towards our healing. And by holistic approach, I mean an approach that incorporates mental, emotional, physical, and energetic aspects. Oftentimes, when we think of healing, we think of therapy, we think of talk therapy. And while talk therapy can be useful, it's usually not enough because we exist as a holistic system, mind, body, and spirit. And while we can work through our minds with speech, with talking, with affirmations, with changing beliefs, we still need to accept our emotions and understand our emotions and are able to learn the skills of emotional intelligence so that we can express emotions in a healthy and constructive way, in the way that doesn't look like outbursts of repressed emotions, which ruins relationships and career prospects. Expressions that actually heal and mend relationships and surroundings instead of destroy them. When I think of this, I think of a Hindu story where the female goddesses were depicted being very gentle, being very patient, very loving, and very wholesome. But over time, when they see that there's so much injustice that goes on in the world, where there's so much incompetency that goes on in this world, they change their form and turn into the warrior goddess and eventually into the destroyer goddess. So the Durga and the Kali archetypes of femininity. And these archetypes show us exactly what happened when we try to be good and just repress and repress and repress our emotions. They eventually turn into a violent outburst that destroy everything. Because only through this destruction, we're able to create anew. We're able to recreate ourselves and the world around us. Because by being good, by repressing, we have accidentally allowed for too many falsities, for too many things that are not us, for too many things that we don't agree with to be in our life, to get into our lives and poison it. So only through destruction can we get rid of these falsities, can we get rid of these inauthenticities. We need to teach ourselves emotional regulations, the skills of seeing, acknowledging, and expressing our emotions in a truthful and constructive and kind way. The third aspect of this holistic healing approach is the physical aspect. The body remembers. So even if we have worked through our limiting beliefs, false beliefs, and negativity through self-talk, even if we have learned affirmations to change what we say to ourselves mentally, even if we have learned to express and acknowledge our emotions healthily, our body still keeps score. So we have to heal our body as well through exercise, through movement, through somatic healing, through EMDR, through different modalities that allow us to address the trauma that has been stuck in a specific place in our body. Because when we live through a trauma, sometimes, in my case at least, it can create a freeze response so that in the future, when we are in the similar situation, Instead of being able to stand up for ourselves and protect ourselves, we sometimes experience the same bodily reaction of freezing in the face of danger instead of being able to run away or fight back. So, in order to address this, we need to work with different physical healing modalities in order to address and heal the trauma that is stuck within our physical body. And the large part of this holistic healing approach is the energetic healing. I believe that we're all frequencies, and we can either operate in the frequency of the past, of the time when the trauma occurred, and be stuck in that time through replaying the trauma over and over again in form of anxiety within our conscious and subconscious mind. Or we can be present. And we can only be present when we know what kind of present we want to create. And that is done through meditation, through changing our brain waves, through changing our frequencies from which we operate to feel differently, think differently, be differently. Visualization is a powerful tool because it allows us to imagine the future that is not yet, to imagine the landscapes, the lives that are not yet, but that can be, because we can deserve that. And the more we immerse ourselves in the vision of a future, in the vision of a parallel reality that we want to live in, where we're free from our traumas, where we're free from our worries, where we operate in a completely different way, having a new operational system, when we can transfer that same emotion, that same feeling, that same thinking into our current reality, then we're shifting our frequency, then we're shifting our energy to match the frequency of that ideal frame that we have pictured in our mind, that we have constantly visualized by engaging all of our senses. And meditation and hypnosis, I have found these tools to be very, very useful because they allow me to be in a more relaxed state of mind, more relaxed state of being. And from this state of being, my mind can be freed from the fight or flight state, and it can actually be creative. It can actually conjure new realities. And from that vision, I can create my new life, a life that is very different from being stuck in the past. Energetic healing really works because it helps us get unstuck. When we operate from a trauma, essentially what we're doing is constantly replaying the sceneries of the past, of the moment when we were traumatized and were unable to move forward. And we operate from our anxious brain instead of from our higher potential. And by meditating, by engaging in energetic tools, we're essentially separating ourselves from our trauma self, from our pain body, by creating space of stillness that allow us to create and conjure new realities, by feeling the new frequencies and bringing these new frequencies into our present moment, becoming the living embodiment of our higher self frequencies, and becoming the version of ourselves that can have a life free from trauma and living to our fullest potential. So those are 3 keys to healing that I have discovered on my long journey of self-healing and gaining self-acceptance, self-love, and self-awareness. I hope it can serve as a cheat code for you to shorten the time in healing so that you can realize your true potential and start living your dream life now in the present moment.